Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm Byron O'Neill, your host for our Comics Creator Chat. Today's episode is a bit of one of happenstance, or perhaps maybe serendipity. I threw out a post on BlueSky when the 2025 Eisner nominations were announced that included folks we've talked to over the past year on the show that had been nominated. And as all great fishermen do, and well, maybe apparently also me, I got a catch. So I invited him on. His project, So Buttons, is nominated in the Best Anthology category, and I'm lucky enough to catch him pre-con. So I can say I knew him when and can add him to my Eisner Pokemon collection, evidently, that I have started. Please welcome the sage of self, the archivist of introspection, the dabster of documentation, Jonathan Baylis. Jonathan, welcome. It's very nice to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Byron. What a lovely intro. Happy to be
Thank
here.
you. I do practice these things. I was a production assistant for WCW, so everybody now must have a proper intro with distinct names that associate with what they're doing. So that's my
nice.
model
I
now.
used to do promos for the WWE.
Oh, okay. What was the period that you were doing that in?
Well, I was at USA Network for a whole bunch of years between what was it, 2007 to 2016, something like that. And throughout, I've done all kinds of like marketing videos for the WWE, but also I've been a Make-A-Wish volunteer for like 25 years, and I've brought
Wow.
kids to meet a lot of the superstars and stuff. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
I have a warm relation. It's funny. It's like I'm not like the biggest fan ever, but it's like I have such a warm relationship with those people just because like between volunteering and working at USA, like I've just been associated with them my whole life. My dad was a big wrestling fan, so yeah,
Oh, cool.
I like those folks, except for
So
Vince. But Vince he can go fuck himself.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I watched the documentary and it actually painted him in a rather kind light, I have to say. So
Well, because he's one of the producers of it, right? Or his wife, whatever.
Yeah. Well, give me a good little short story there. Like I'm curious now. What's a really cool experience you had with somebody that made a kid's, dream come true?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if we keep on just the wrestling line, I mean, what's always good about visiting the WWE is, the kid will like he'll go, I want to meet this one wrestler, like I want to meet Triple H,
Right.
and and sure enough, we'll take him to the garden, and Paul comes out, but these wrestlers, they know where their bread is buttered, and every wrestler comes out. They all want to meet the kid. They
Yeah.
all want to give this kid the best time ever. So, I mean, absolutely, the wrestling wishes are great because, these superstars are just, treasures, and I think, I think when you're in that gig, I mean, you hear a lot of like, I don't know, bad things about certain people, but for the most part, it's like these are guys that, they're working like on the road more than 200 days a year,
Yep.
and these kids give them nothing but love, so they give it right back to these kids. So that's a good one. I did Lady Gaga's First Wish.
Oh, cool.
That was at I think it was at Radio City. It was I don't think it was at the Garden. I think it's probably for some Z100 thing. It was very early in her career. Clearly, I'm sure she's done 100 wishes since then. She's a pretty giving kind of a person, that Gaga. So, but
Wow.
yeah, that was a really good one because the kid was, I think, I want to say like a real fan of hers, a little monster,
Yeah.
those are her fans. And her dad was just like super, the dad was just super straight, like football kind of guy. And, and the son was this, very gothy and makeup and all this stuff. But that dad, you would almost have expected him to be like jerky or not understanding, but was just the warmest guy, happy to have, his son have this, amazing experience, even if it wasn't like his thing. And yeah, there's a lot of good. I mean, so much good stuff comes out of Make-A-Wish. It's it's a very very rarely anything bad have I experienced in my 25 years volunteering there. So
Wow. I mean, bless you for doing that. That's really, really special to be a part of that. And I'm sure it enriches your life too. I mean, it's always nice to have that
100%.
grounding amount. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I always the mantra for me is like it's not about me, right? Like the Make-A-Wish, it's all for the kid. It's not about me. I mean, I benefit a little bit. It's certainly very nice that I got to bring a Monty Python fan to meet John Cleese.
Wow.
And I was a crazy fan when I was that kid's age, when I was 13, but it wasn't, like this wasn't for me. I just happened to be sitting there,
Yeah.
just happened to be
Yeah.
there. Happened to be there.
Well, I can tell
So
already that you are not a person who does anything by half measures. If you've done 25 years in Make-A-Wish and you've been working on sew buttons for well over a decade now, the
yeah,
Eisner
20 years.
nomination, that's
20 years.
crazy. Like that Eisner nom is for issue 14. And I think you had been working on something sort of like a one comic a year or so strategy,
Yeah.
or although
Yeah.
not totally rigid. So let's take a quick step back.
Sure.
So this is the first time we've met. So kind of what's your comics origin story look like?
My comics origin story is so I went to NYU film school and I was kind of
Okay.
sick of I didn't fully enjoy it or embrace it, and I really wanted a break. So I moved to England for a semester. I did, semester abroad in London, and where I lived in Lewisham, down the street was a shop. It was called Skinny Malinks, and it was run by a guy from New York City. I think I wrote in the story about this guy. That he was from Brooklyn, but I think he reached out to me and he's like, "No, I'm actually from Queens." And I'm like, "Well, in the comic, you're from Brooklyn." But he had a store, this New York guy, and so it became like a home away from home that I got to spend it in this comic book store all the time. And that's when I really was starting to grow my interest in indie comics and small press comics. But because I was like not super satisfied with film, and wasn't sure that I wanted to do that, even though that's what I was getting my degree. And I was like, oh, maybe I could work in comics. Maybe I could become an editor of comics or something like that. And so when I got back to New York, one of the first things I did, I went to this convention in Philly, and it happened to be a convention that gets talked about because there was a big debate that happened with Todd McFarlane and Peter David, and that was a whole fun thing. But I met editors at Marvel, at Topps, and at Marvel, I met Bob Harris, who was editing the X-Men at the time, and he set me up with this woman named Mary Mack. Mary Mack was Tom DeFalco's assistant. DeFalco was the editor in chief at the time, and Mary Mack was the intern coordinator. And then I met this guy, Ira Friedman, and Greg Goldstein from Topps. They were doing comics. They had just released Mike Mignola's Dracula, the Coppola's Dracula
Yeah.
adaptation. And so I just kept in contact with those people. And sure enough, I got an internship at Marvel. Like it was like, nope, no problem. And, in my interview, Mary asked me, he's like, oh, do you want to uh, you know, which comic would you like to work on? The only thing I can't offer you is, like X-Men and Spider-Man kind of a thing. And I said, well, I want to learn as much as I can about things. And she's like, oh, maybe you want to work on Marvel Age because that guy doesn't even have an assistant editor, and that Marvel Age magazine like touches upon all the departments, marketing, sales, editorial, the whole thing. So I basically became sort of as an intern, more like an assistant editor there,
Wow.
whereas like, the interns for X-Men were really just hopping boards all day long, like just, and that's cool,
Right.
but I actually got to learn just a little bit more about the business. And it was a kind of a tumultuous time. And this was like 1994, like my first week Kirby died.
Wow.
So that was an omen. And I went to Joe Simon's apartment to get a photo of those guys because this is like sort of like pre the ease of internet
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. So that was really cool. I went to Joe Simon's apartment. I did a story about that got drawn by Fred Hembeck, in an issue because Hembeck used to do Marvel Age strips, and I was like, oh, you'd be the perfect person to do, stories about my internship. And so Hembeck did a couple of stories for me, in Sew Buttons. And then after when my internship ended at Marvel, I was hoping like maybe some assistant editor job would open up, but
Yeah.
things were not great. Marvel wasn't doing so great. But one of the guys, a guy named Chris Cooper, who actually in recent years has more fame because like some bitch, some really terrible Karen person, racist, horrible person was like, did some shit to him in Central Park because he had a dog and she had a dog, and he was like, "Hey, I need to keep the distance," and
Yeah.
whatever. But now, it became, and he was just, oh no, he didn't even have a dog. He's just a bird watcher. He's like a really cool bird watcher. And yeah, Christian Cooper, yeah, they and I think National Geographic even gave him a show because he's like
Whoa.
really good looking, well spoken guy, like, and he had this bit of fame, and yeah, they gave him a bird watching show. He's like super cool. Anyway, so Christian Cooper, I saw him at what was the last thing I did with Marvel. They sort of like gave us free passes. They were like, oh, we can't give you a job, but here's a free pass to see Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein, with the
Okay.
Marvel crew. And I was
Right.
behind Christian, and I was like, hey man, any opportunities opening up, assistant editor jobs, blah blah blah. And he's like, no. But then the guy next to me was a guy named Jeff Gomez from Valiant, and he's like, well, how about you intern at Valiant? And I was like, sure,
Yeah.
why not? And this was like just post Shooter, uh, rest in peace if you like that guy. And that's controversial, that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I was the Bob Layton era of Valiant, and
Okay.
I interned there for a year, and then something opened up at the Topps company, and so then I interned at the Topps company, and that turned into an actual staff job. So I was editing, associate editing a book that was, everything was licensed with Topps, right? Everything's licensed. So we were doing a failed Marines and space show that was on Fox called Space Above and Beyond, but it featured the first mainstream work of Yannick Paquette. So
Okay.
we kind of like introduced Yannick to the world, and now that guy, like, he's done Wonder Woman, he's worked with Grant Morrison, he's done the Avengers, yeah, guy's great, he's Canadian. Um, and and then like the comics division folded as everything was folding. Like right now we're, in this time of like, oh, the last Diamond catalog just came out, right? Like, but
Right.
I was there to witness the utter consolidation of all the distributors where, Marvel bought Heroes World and completely fucked that up. And then, but then DC went exclusive with Diamond, and other people were going exclusive with Capital. And
Yep.
then with the loss of Marvel and DC, every distributor died. So it was just Capital and Diamond, and then Diamond just won. And that's why we had Diamond for these past 25 years. But the comics division kind of closed down, and then they had me I was working in the trading card division. So I was working on like Star Wars cards and X-Files cards. But, because I was not working on any comics anymore, I was like, well, maybe this is a time I'll write my own comic. And as I was coming across the work of like a guy named Harvey Picar, and Picar, was this guy out of Cleveland who wrote autobiographical stories, but he had different artists draw them. And I was like, that
Yeah.
is a model that I can do. I was like, I've got a staff job. I'll take some of my money and pay artists. And that is what I've been doing for 20 years.
That is a wild journey, let me tell you, because it's sort of like living the dream in many aspects. And I think
Yeah.
people think that, hey, I'm going to get into comics. I'm going to get this internship at one of the big two, and then my life is set. And rarely does it
Yeah.
actually ever work out that way.
No, the only other intern that I know of, I interned with a guy named David Bogart, just a real sweetheart of a guy. He, after his internship, I think he went to work for Harris, who Harris had the Vampirella license, and we did
Yeah.
Vampirella cards, but they were doing another comic that was like a minor hit for a little while. Was Ethan Van Sciver did something called Cyberfrog,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yep.
right. And now Ethan's brother, Noah, is a big indie darling. And he's one of my most consistent collaborators. Like I've worked with Noah. Noah's drawing for something for me right now. It might be his fifth story or sixth story, but one of the rare sort of like brother stories in comics. Though Ethan is certainly that guy's like a controversial figure
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
in the
Just a
world
little
for a
bit.
lot for a lot of folks. But Noah is, he's an indie darling and a good friend. So um yeah, it's just but I was talking about Bogart. So Bogart, I remember seeing him. He was like, I think he was asking us if we wanted to do cyber frog trading cards. I think we turned that down at Topps, but then Bogart got his uh legal degree. But I bet you he did that because of the just the industry imploding in the late 90s. And when he got his legal degree, Marvel gave him a job in the legal department, and he's been there ever since. So that's a good 20 years or so as well. And I bump into him every once in a while, but that's like the one Marvel internship I heard of with like, oh, he's working at Marvel still
Yeah.
all these years later. But yeah, it's
Well,
rare. It's rare. Yeah.
coming up in that capes and cows environment, like what attracted you specifically to wanting to do autobiographical stuff? Because that's a bit of a shift.
It is, but I think it's most likely an age kind of a thing. I think
Okay.
I was also trying to, there were more magazines like besides Wizard, there was like Comics Scene and Hero Illustrated, and I was trying to see if I could write reviews, and so that
Okay.
led me to reading more indie comics, and I found myself really gravitating towards like, so, you would call these guys like almost like a Canadian trio of like Chester Brown, Seth, and Joe Matt, and they were all did these really kind of introspective autobiographical stuff. So that combined with Harvey Pekar, and then someone who really blew my mind, another Canadian woman named Julie Doucet, absolutely incredible cartoonist. I think it's just maturing, it was
Okay.
only so like, like I tried reading a Batman comic just the other day. There's an artist I really like, and I'll read anything he does, even though it's superheroes. A guy named Marcos Martin. He's like, almost like a graphic designer in the way that he does his work. Really good panel designs and page layouts, and I like it. But I was trying to read Absolute Batman, and I guess that's just sort of I don't know. They're calling it like it's like the Ultimates, but
Yeah.
for DC. I'm
Yeah.
like, I mean, whatever. Like, DC's been doing Elseworld stuff forever, and so I guess this Batman is, I don't know. He was friends with his rogues gallery. Like they all went to school together or something. I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah. Not your thing.
It's just not my thing anymore. I can't.
Sure.
You just you age out of it. But I mean, I'm sure I could read a good superhero book if I came across. Like, I really enjoyed reading Invincible, that entire
Yeah.
series. Um, and that's certainly superhero. But for the most part, I'm reading more graphic novels and small press.
Yeah.
That's more what I gravitate towards these days. Right now, I'm going through a huge underground comics phase because I met Dennis Kitchen. Do you know Dennis
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kitchen?
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So like I certainly read a bunch of Kitchen Sink Press comics,
Yeah.
growing up, and certainly when I had that phase like in England where I was like going through all this indie stuff. And I met Dennis at a small press convention called the Small Press Expo. It's like I consider it my home convention, even though it's in Bethesda, Maryland, and I'm from Brooklyn. But I met Dennis there, and we traded. Like, I sent him some sew buttons, and he sent me a bunch of kitchen sink. And I was like, oh, I want to do a thing where because I would say that sew buttons is maybe to a lot of people a little bit more on the vanilla side. It's sort of like a feel good and humorous and heartwarming. It's not edgy. It's not edgy. And I was like, oh, I would like to do one issue that is edgier, like underground. So because Dennis Kitchen gave me a few undergrounds, I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get 100 undergrounds. But then, it's like this, whatever OCD thing I have, I'm like, I'm going to get 100, and then I'm going to put them in chronological order, and I'm going to read them so I could experience the underground as it unfolded in real time.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I have this idea of how I'll do an underground issue of So Buttons in within the next year or two, and I already had one story drawn by Johnny Ryan. Do you know Johnny Ryan? You know that guy?
I know of, yes.
Yeah, he does a lot. He's like he's a like an underground cartoonist, but in modern times, and certainly plays around with a lot of scatological stuff and sex stuff. And so I had him write um a story. Well, I wrote a story. He drew it. About how my son was learning potty training, and so we went to
Okay.
our cartoonist house, Emily Flake, on Christmas. She's like, "Come over for Christmas." So we came over, and then my son like totally just did a deuce, like, right, because the training was he's naked. And so I say, we like,
Yep.
Emily, we'll come over, but we're training him, and the training is he's naked, and that's how he'll learn. And so yeah, he just took a dump right on her floor, and I was like,
As
who
if
would be
on
good for
cue.
that? Yeah, who'd be good for that? Johnny Ryan. And Johnny Ryan was like, yes, I'll do that. So I've got my first underground story, for that issue in a year or two.
So, when you're looking for collaborators, is it something that
Yeah.
you typically style fits story? Or are you a fan first, like you just mentioned there, based on
Oh, it's a
availability? Like,
hodgepodge.
okay,
It's a hodgepodge. I think a lot of times what happens is I'll buy a lot of mini comics at these small press cons, and I'll flip through things, and I see an image, and it like triggers something in me where I go, I have a story for this artist, and so like I have these strips where they're like one pagers of people who share my birthday, celebrities that share my birthday, because
okay,
I like that's how I like to find some artists, is like test them out on one pagers first. So like if I had so Johnny Rotten shares my birthday, so I was like,
yeah,
oh, I'll have a punk artist draw that one. So I had Josh
okay,
Bayer draw that one, and that's like a perfect match because he loves punks and punk music. And but then let's say I have a story about getting my first dog, and it should be cute. And so, my friend Rachel Dukes, they did a manga style, kind of art and make it cute. So a lot of times I am using the artist's talents um for the style of story that I'm writing. I try to pair it like that. Like I think Harvey, I think for him, there was a lot of financial aspect to his thing. It was like whoever's cheapest, like I don't know if he really paired his artists, with the stories. I think a lot of his stories have, similar themes, and whatever artist was just there and cheap. But I consider myself like an editor in that way, where I really try to pair the artists very specifically for the style that I'm writing, or
okay.
the content of the story. So that's always the goal. That's always the goal, at least.
Have you ever taken a stab at trying to draw them yourself?
No. No, so the artist that I work with most consistently, like in every single issue, there's an artist named TJ Kirsch. Like he was with me from the very beginning, because but I didn't even think I was gonna put out a comic. What happened was, um, there was like a local newspaper that it was called like Free Comics NYC, and they were just putting random strips in there, and I was like, "Oh, I'll have," my friend at work drew a strip, and like it got in, but then that tabloid folded. And my wife is a stand-up comedian, and at this club that she was performing at, there was this thing called, I think it was called The Comical, and it was a magazine about stand-up comedy, but in the back, he had a one-page Harvey Pekar cartoon, and it
Okay.
was just it was a reprint. And but I wrote this guy, and I said, "Well, how would you like something brand new that's about dating a comedian, and I would do that for you." He's like, "Yeah, I would love that kind of a thing." And so I went to Craigslist, and I put up an ad that was like guaranteed publishing and a couple dollars, and I got two kids from the Joe Kubert school interested. and one of them was TJ Kirsch, and he's been in every single issue that I've had. I forgot why I'm talking about TJ, other than other than to say he's been in every single issue of So Buttons. What was your question? Do you remember what
Well,
your question was?
yeah, I was actually talking about you illustrating something yourself.
Oh, right, because I was gonna say, because I've done so many strips with TJ. He was like, "Let's do a collection of just my strips, but to intro the book, you draw. I'll write it and you draw it." And I've had such a hard time trying to get around it and do it. And yeah, so yeah, just the idea of I have so much respect for artists and their craft, and I am not an artist, but I think I have to suck it up and finally do that for him at some point. But yeah, I never wanted to really draw my own comics. I love the idea of working with so many. I think with this issue that I'm finishing up right now, issue 15, that brings up the number to like 74 artists that I've
Wow,
hired for So Buttons.
that's incredible.
It's been great. It's been great.
I'm really curious because this kind of storytelling, you really have to put yourself out there. One of the things that I admire about your storytelling is this sense of self-deprecating humor, and
Mm,
you live with a comedian. I've always
sure.
thought it's really a good way to disarm people with that self-awareness that society sort of tends to shy away from, as a way of
Mm.
expressing yourself. So, because we all have our insecurities, right? So, is this your natural way of interacting people, or has this become kind of just a way to vent that part of your personality through
No,
your
no,
work?
no. And it might be a flaw, just because I'm the same way in the workplace, a professional
Okay.
workplace. I've just always been open. Like I don't, like I've just always been open, and this is how I communicate. And like I think, I mean, to a fault, right? Like I'm terrible. Like, don't tell me a secret. Don't, like I just, because I forget to even, remember
Yeah.
that something is a secret. Yeah, I'm very open with myself, because I think I just think that's a good way to be. But if I were to dig in psychologically, I was like a bullied kid, right? So my whole childhood, and I think it's probably more like I'm self-deprecating to myself, before you can do it to me, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
There might be that
Yep.
going on psychologically, but as far as this is who I am. So Buttons is who I am on the page, and in real life. Like I'll tell, like the story that I was telling you. I think before we turned on the mic, about saving this kid's life, and then my mother having a stroke the next day. Um, the way I told it to you is almost exactly how it is on the page,
Yeah.
in So Buttons. So Buttons is really this collection of just the stories that I tell in general to people about my life. And for a while, I would try to think like, well, like what is So Buttons? What is it about? Who's it for? Blah 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 blah. And I think now that I have a kid, the entirety of So Buttons will certainly serve as, um, my legacy in some way for him and maybe his family. Um,
Sure.
you know, if we don't get sent to the concentration camps in the next couple of years, so we'll see.
Yeah.
we'll,
Yeah.
we'll see.
No. Yeah, yeah. Well, have you gotten comfortable with all of these different presentations of you? Because I know I've got like a
Always.
PFP commission done recently, and I'm
Mm.
excited, but that's just like one thing. And a cartoonist is going to pull out
Oh,
whatever aspects of your, silhouette that they feel like is going to best represent for what they're doing. So
yeah.
everybody has insecurities. So have you always been comfortable with that?
I've been pretty comfortable. So I started my comics around the same time that I was dating my comedian wife. And so
Yeah.
her name's Ophira Eisenberg. And she she told me on date two, she was like, "Here's the deal. If we keep dating, you're gonna get in the act." And she goes, and if it's funny, it stays. And
Okay.
I'm like, that's fair. That's fine. I always loved comedy. So, I don't care that, the woman I love is teasing me on stage. That's, I think I've only vetoed one joke in 20 years. And it was because she was like teasing something about Make-A-Wish. And I was like, nope.
Oh,
I was like, nope.
okay. Yeah.
No Make-A-Wish jokes.
Makes sense.
But otherwise, yeah, no, our marriage is fair game and all that. So, I mean, as for all the interpretations of my face, I mean, I have a spec sheet that I give artists, and I go, do whatever you want to do, and I go, but here's what's consistent: the 6 panel duckbill cap. And
Okay.
mustache. That now I'm a little unshaven, but like mustache, chin patch and soul patch, like that's the Sew Button's face. Anything else goes. So every once in a while, like I'll see, maybe a bigger nose than I have, or maybe like ears sticking out, or whatever it is. That not once have I ever thought like, oh, I don't want to look like that, or I don't want to be
Yeah.
portrayed by that. Like I love it all. Maybe my favorite image is I mentioned Josh Bayer earlier. Josh did some kind of super grotesque headshot. I call it a Sew Buttons headshot. That I usually put them on the back of the books. It was so grotesque, and it's my favorite. It's
Is that the one
absolutely
that
my it's
it
absolutely my
looks like a
favorite.
Garbage Pail Kid? Is that the one?
No, so the
Okay.
Garbage Pail Kid one, which I love. So working at the Topps company, um, I met some of the creators of these cards, right? Like Garbage Pail Kids. And when I was there, we were
Okay.
trying to do a new series that was called Bathroom Buddies, that did not go to press, I think, in any kind of major way. And it was drawn by Jay Lynch. And Jay is one of these underground legends. It's like if you're into the underground, you're gonna know Robert Crumb, Art Spiegelman, Jay Lynch, Skip Williamson, all these
Yeah.
people, Trina Robbins. And Jay was one of these people. And he was friends with Spiegelman when since they were like in the fanzine days. They were like 16 years old, or maybe even 13-year-old, mailing each other stuff. But I met Jay through Tops, and he worked on the designs of so many of those Garbage Pail Kids cards that other painters then, like, painted, real versions. I think John Pound and Tom Bunk and those guys. But Jay did designs, and we were just becoming friendly just because we both were working with Tops. And I said, "Oh, I'm doing this comic," and I said, I want to do a Garbage Pail Kids cover." And that was probably his most requested thing, was for him to draw something Garbage Pail Kids, and he was probably pretty sick of it. So I remember him saying, like, "Baylis, this is going to be the last fucking Garbage Pail Kids thing I ever do," which I didn't believe him, because he was happy to take money for anything. But he did do that cover of me, and it's like a Garbage Pail Kid of Basquiat. We have the same initials. Jean-Michel Basquiat. I'm Jonathan Michael Baylis. And so it's Basquiat holding a baby me. And it's like I'm like a baby, but I got the hat and the and the facial hair. And I have that original art in my bathroom, where I see it every
Wow.
day. So, and Jay passed away a bunch of years ago now. I don't know if it's like 10 years, but somewhere between five and 10. But yeah, lucky to have that, and was lucky to have him do that. When I go to conventions, people gravitate towards that cover all the time. They're like, "Hey, that looks like," and I'm like, "Yeah, it looks like a Garbage Pail Kid," because I got one of the original artists to do it. So
Oh, that's really cool.
I've made
Maybe
stickers out of
someday
it. Yeah.
maybe someday you'll be shocked when your kid finally grows up and they're like, "Okay, dad, I want to be one of the artists in this." Because kids have a way
Mm.
of doing things to the parents. Like, I have the best kid in the world. He's a teen. He's gonna be a senior next year in high school. He's absolutely amazing, but he hates art. His I have worked with artists or been one for 30 years, and his opinion of art is completely worthless. So, kids will break
Yeah.
your heart. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll draw you and you'll be like, that's painful."
That's funny. He's already been in a few issues. My kid is 9.5, and I've taken some of his drawings and put them into still buttons. There is this family element that developed in the past 5 years or so, probably because I grew my family. So I will include him, and my aunt um, went to FIT and drew. And so I put one of her life drawings into sew buttons. But my son, he did his own version of this cover. And made it as a Father's Day card for me.
Oh,
So I
nice.
think that's the piece of art I'm going to put into the next issue of his. But
Wow.
yeah, that kid, he's already doing it. He's already in the mix in sew buttons.
Well, I don't know if you're comfortable with actually a full-blown career in comics or not for them, but, you know.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, there's not much money in in
Yeah.
in comics as most people know, which is why I'm super happy to I pay all of my artists, and I think, for and especially in this kind of like small press scene, some people, like, I'm their first paid check ever for drawing a comic, and that's really nice. So yeah, I'm happy to do my part and contribute to, the industry whatever I can by putting money into the pockets of artists.
That's always good these days, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's super hard to really make money in comics, and we're in an interesting time right now where we have this, like, a generation of kids, and I work with a lot of Gen Z people right now at my current job. Right now I'm working at a toy and game company. And I don't want to use the word entitled, but they feel empowered to ask for things in a way that, like, Gen X was just sort of like, we were maybe more sheepish about,
Right.
like, asking for things. And I think, there's a generation of these kids who have gone to art schools, and their parents, maybe, they've paid for most of the art school or all the art school, and they're all expecting real money, real jobs, and, like, no one has told them along the way that, like, there's really not it's not money in comics. There's, like, 5 people who make money in comics, it's not, it's not for that, and they're disappointed, and they expect, like, "Oh, well, when I get an agent, I'm gonna get, like, 100 grand for my graphic novel," and it's just sort of like, it just doesn't work that way as far as I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those days are gone, and the days of
Yeah.
even long serial runs on at the big 2 are over too. I mean, you get a 5-issue
Yeah.
mini-series, and if
Right.
it hits, it hits, and then you'll get more, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, those companies, they're no longer comics companies, right? Like, the phrase that I use is that Marvel and DC are new product development divisions of a larger
Okay.
corporation. They exist to, create more IP so that real money can be made
Yeah.
in movies and licensing and whatever. But that comics business, I mean, I can't imagine how little money that comics business is making. I mean, when I was at Topps 25 years ago, I think we were really hoping for sales of, like, I don't know, like 30,000 for an issue or something like that. And I feel like, I bet you that 30,000 now, like, and like, we didn't hit that, we'd be like, nope, cancel it. I bet you 30,000 now is probably considered a hit of some kind for some of these books. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think all these things, they're just new product development. And then, not that we're going to have a Diamond catalog to look at anymore, but you look at the Diamond catalog, and half those companies are companies that, to my eye, only purely have been created to sell movies, to sell IP. I cannot see any reason why these companies exist making these kind of genre books where I'm just sort of like, there's no passion there. like they're just, they're just trying to create IP and hoping Netflix calls them on their cell phone or something. Like it's, you know, I think the really good passion that you see is in the smaller press.
Well, kind of getting in the cross section because
Yeah.
this has been nominated for an Eisner. I got to chat with
Yeah.
my friend Ryan Claytor last year, who was he was an Eisner judge, and so we got to shed a
Oh,
little bit of
wow.
light on the process. Yeah,
I've heard a little bit about it.
Ryan's great, by the way. I highly
Yeah.
recommend looking at his stuff. But,
Cool.
it's wild to me that these spheres exist somewhat independently in comics. And that's kind of what you were just talking about. But they're smashed together for these awards because you've got Ryan North
Mm.
nominated for Fantastic Four, which is now on the biggest stage
Yeah.
in the world, right?
Yes,
And
of
that's
course.
right alongside Pee Pee Poo Poo, which is kind of wild.
Yeah. It is totally wild. Like, so, like, like my dream, if I had a dream of getting nominated for an award, my dreams only extended to the Ignatz Awards, right? Like this is the awards for small press people. Like right now, like every once in a while, like Chris Ware will come out with something new, or Dan Clowes will come out with something new, and like he'll get nominated for an Ignatz, and I'm like, that guy's too big now. Like Chris Ware's too big. Dan Clowes is too big for an Ignatz. Ignatz is for, these smaller folks, like Caroline Cash and Pee Pee Poo Poo, and publishers like Silver Sprocket. But um, but yeah, the Eisners. I'm really trying to wrap my head around how this happened. Now, surely I did submit. I submitted to the like I did,
Yeah.
and the Eisners to me, when I was working at Topps, I worked San Diego Comic-Con. I
Yeah.
stayed at a hotel once and rode the elevator with Will Eisner and Mark Hamill. So I know San Diego. I've worked San Diego. I exhibited at a small press table at San Diego 15 years ago. Um, but I never in a million years did I expect to get a nomination for an Eisner. It was almost not a joke, but like a lark, or just like we're setting a clock. Like, it's another year of just sending my book out there. Um, but and my category is very weird. This anthology category. It's like I'm up against sort of like kind of major indie publishers where Oni Press, they have
Right.
they revived the EC Comics and IDW. And actually, my Topps guy, Greg Goldstein, he at one point was like president of IDW, and IDW has Godzilla. It's 70th anniversary of Godzilla anthology. Like those are two of the sort of bigger competition. And then in the next level, you want to go pure indie. You've got Fantagraphics has an amazing anthology that comes out, I think once a year, twice a year. It's called Now, edited by this guy I like, Eric Reynolds, and that is as fantastic anthology, indie anthology. And then this guy, comics creator I like, Sammy Harcum, he um he did a comic called Crickets, and he had a big book called Blood of the Virgin that came out as a collected edition. But he also used to be the editor of this really cool anthology called Kramer's Ergot. And he created a new anthology this year called Peep. Um, and that might have been one of my favorite books of the year, was his Peep anthology. So you've got like these kind of big indie publishers, and then you've got these like mid-range, like classic pure indie publishers, and then like a guy that like has to staple his own book sometimes. That's me. Like, this mini comic being nominated in the anthology category is very bizarre. Very bizarre. I don't know how it happened. But I know from the hearing about the judging, it's like, let's say I had one friend, right? Like one friend was one of the judges. That's not enough, because
Right.
you have to get put up by
Yep.
a few people. So I don't know who these people are. I don't know how they know me. I don't know, I guess the work spoke for itself. They felt bad because my mom died. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, the book got nominated. I mean, the nomination is about a big as a win as I could ever expect that in this small press kind of level, like to be not like to be nominated for an Eisner to me is totally fucking insane. Like I do not accept it, you know. But I'm going, I'm going to the Eisners, and Scott Dunbier, who is a fantastic editor, and he edits all these cool artist editions. All these huge over of original art.
Yeah.
And Dunbier, and he used to be Alan Moore's editor. Dunbier, who I put him into an issue of So Buttons because he like me, he was sort of like this expat working for a British publisher called Quality Comics, which was also a storefront. So it was like this combination of a storefront, and also they published Miracle Man
Okay.
in Warrior magazine in England back in the day, and Scott worked there. I don't know if he was like an intern or if he was a staffer, but Scott worked there. And so when I talked about my time in England, I put Scott in the story. But Scott is getting a VIP table at the Eisners, and he invited me to sit at the table, which is like
Great.
unbelievably nice. I never even met this guy in person. He's just invited me so kindly. So I'm super excited to go to the Eisners and see people. I mean, at this point, when I go to San Diego, it's an even split of like comics people I've known for 30 years and media people I've known for 20 years. Oh, the lights just went out in my building, in my office. I don't know what happened there.
Trump's
Very
taking over
weird.
New York. That's what's going on.
Oh, geez, yeah. And
Well,
he's
yeah. Go ahead.
go for it. I know we don't need to. I don't need to say one thing
Yeah.
about Trump. I don't.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Our listeners will be like, click, okay, because we've had
Yeah.
enough of all that. But I'll
Yeah.
assume that the Eisner experience is going to be nailed down for inclusion in issue 15.
Well, 15 is 15's already done
Oh, okay.
with the writing, so it'll be in 16, unless I can somehow squeeze like a super quick one pager before I go to press in August. But the Eisners are like July 25th or something, and
Right.
my book is already written, and I think pretty cohesive. It's weirdly cohesive, this next issue. So. It's a lot
Yeah.
of David Lynch and film industry stuff.
So 14 was a lot about death. Your
Yeah,
passing of
life
your
and death.
mom. Yeah,
Mhm.
dealing with cancer, your comics mentor, and even you yourself basically saving a child from that experience, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you go about picking what you want to kind of focus on? Or do you have a specific focus, or is that just something that
No,
happens?
it's just something that happens.
Okay.
And only something that I've really thought about more the past 2 or 3 issues. Usually it's just like I overwrite, like I'll write, let's say 40 pages, and however many pages come in by the time I go to press, that's an issue. And and again, I think, I have a skill as a kind of editor, and I place it in a certain order. But the past couple of issues, like 2 issues ago, I think I called it Harvey's, Pals, and Mine. And basically half the issue is artists that worked with Harvey P. Carr, and
Okay.
then artists that I'm have a more personal connection with or true friends with, as opposed to like some artists I've never met before, never had another conversation. It's just someone I met on Instagram and was just like, draw me a thing, and they drew me a thing. Um, and this was way more about friends, and then I ordered it a certain way. But life and death, this issue, yeah, it's just kind of the way it happened. I mean, even the fact that I wrote this story about how James Earl Jones did my college graduation. Um, I didn't expect that guy to die after I wrote that story. Like, you know, uh, you
Okay.
know, uh, so it's just what happened. But so the theme, the theme presented itself, as I started collecting the stories that came in. But it is true with this next issue. Like I was saying, like, oh, I find it to be my most cohesive issue. I think I very specifically wrote stories this time and tried to connect certain things as an experiment, is almost it's almost long form, right? Like
Okay.
it is almost one full thing, even though I've got a half a dozen artists on it. It does tell a period of time of where I like interned for a film distributor and how I got there and how David Lynch almost got me. He kind of got me my job because of this thing, and just how it all connects. And because I have this idea for a long form memoir that I want to do. About a year before my mom passed, we found out that she was adopted and she did not know it. Like I did
Okay.
Ancestry, and I came up 25% Japanese.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Okay.
and I was like, well, that's
Who
weird.
knew?
And my who knew? And then my mom is always had always these kind of exotic features. And we thought she was Russian. She thought she was Russian. She's like, oh, she's the kind of Russian that's like on the border of Mongolia, right? Like that have
Yeah.
more Asian features. Like Sarah Silverman has a whole set about that. And uh, so yeah, she's half Japanese. And then I went on this whole journey of like figuring out, well, how did that happen? And who is she and where did she come from? I mean, So Buttons is a lot of identity stuff. And now my mom presented me with um, a new mystery, even after her passing. And I think I've got a whole book in that one.
Well, I think we're probably here of a similar vintage. It's interesting to hear you talk about this because it feels very much like the cliched maturation process of being an artist, right? You hit a certain
Sure.
age and you get that pocket of wisdom and experience and everything kind of coalescing into, I don't know, you've got an Eisner nom for it, so you're doing something right. So looking at the body of your work now, how has age noticeably impacted you aside from, okay, now you have a kid, so the kid's in there too?
Yeah, I think what I was talking about earlier. I don't think I looked at this with legacy. And I think in general, I don't think about legacy like in my career, like, oh, what am I leaving behind? I think
Yeah.
when I was younger, I probably didn't give a shit. I probably did not think about it or did not care about it. Like I'm not a big I don't believe in the afterlife or any of that kind of stuff. That's not my bag. Um but I think because I'm a dad, I think that does make me think of legacy, and and I feel like the fact that I've been doing this So Buttons for 20 years, it's sort of like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, but now I do kind of know, like I am leaving a legacy. I am
Yeah.
leaving, something, even if it's just for one reader, And Lucas, he's read them all, already. Like he loves reading them now, and like there's one one strip where he was reading an issue and he saw the word shit in it. And, so he starts just jumping up all around the apartment going, shit, 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 shit,
Oh,
shit, shit.
yeah, of course.
And I just thought that was hilarious. So then I turned that strip into like that story into a strip where it's like, so it's like Ouroboros.
Evergreen.
Yeah. So, um, uh, like I am leaving this for him and for, anyone uh in the family that goes, because right now it's like I was telling you, I think before you turn this on, like my dad's house kind of exploded, the boiler exploded,
Yeah.
and all kinds of things are destroyed, but luckily, because it wasn't flames, it's just soot. Like photo albums can be cleaned, and I had been going through all of these photos because of this my mom's ancestry, and realizing that at like 16, she looked more Japanese than I ever thought.
Sure. Yeah.
And so yeah, so I have these photos, but my son will have stories, a little more fleshed out stories about his dad, if he wants to remember things or know things or learn things.
I mean, that's a really precious thing. It really is.
Trying.
Yeah.
Trying.
Well, you successfully crowdfunded the last couple of issues on Kickstarter. How has
Yeah.
the crowdfunding landscape as a sales tool helped you reach a wider audience?
So I started with this thing called Crowdfunder, and I think the reason why I started with Crowdfunder is because I think they were sponsoring SPX, Small Press Expo, a couple of years ago, and I was like, well, I might as well give it a try, because I think they said they were going to do some like extra free marketing, and so I was like, well, if someone's gonna give me an extra push, then I'll do that. I'll give it a try. And I raised a couple of $1,000, which certainly, like, it cleared the printing, but not the artist costs. But like, that's fine.
Right.
I mean, like, the artist costs have always come out of my my day job. Um, but it built up like a mailing list, and I don't know if I got a ton of new readers, but maybe I got some. But then someone connected me with somebody at Kickstarter, and they have a very established relationship with their comics fans, and there are more people there that go on Kickstarter and try new things. So 2 issues ago, I raised more money than I did the first year on Crowdfunder. I raised more
Yeah.
money on Kickstarter, and then last year was my third campaign, and I raised even more money. And the sort of the combination of um, making money on Kickstarter, and then just selling at conventions and stuff. I think I'm in profit for the first time ever. I
Nice.
think for my first printing, I have made $5.41. I think that was
Only two
what I did.
decades.
Yeah, only 2 decades to make $5 in comics. So take that to the bank, kids. But no, but I did a second printing, and now I have this Eisner nomination. So I'm getting all of
Yeah.
these orders in. So it's actually getting to the point where I'm going to clear, since I don't have new artist costs, I'm going to clear my printing uh, cost pretty quickly, and I'll have hundreds of dollars left over to share with the artists, which is not something they even expected.
Amazing.
Like I paid them all up front, and they probably figured that's the last money
That's that.
I'll get from that. And then, like, I don't, but I'll have some money in me. Maybe it's only like everyone gets an extra $20, but like, it's free money.
Exactly.
So I'm looking forward to that happening by the end of the year, which I know it will. So that'll be fun to do that.
Well, hopefully you can tag the Eisner upcharge on there, and you'll win. And because I'm trying to imagine the difference, right? Because you now have this really cool tool in crowdfunding comics, whereas
Yes.
before
Yeah.
you're at a con, and I'm imagining this pitch where it's like, hey, you're going to absolutely love this. There was this one time that I nearly handed Pamela Anderson her trading cards. You want to buy it? Right. So
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, yeah. Depending on whether if I win, whether I win or not, I guess forever I will be the Eisner nominated author, or the Eisner nominated series. Um, that will go on the next Kickstarter, of which it's like TikTok.
yeah.
All the art coming in, I'm going to have to do it in the next couple of months, which I can't even believe. I feel like I just
Yeah.
finished the last Kickstarter, but this one will be interesting if there's any kind of a bump because of that. Yeah. I mean, what I'm doing right now, this second, is I was like, oh, I've never tried to seek any kind of like literary agent or anything like that. So I was like, oh,
Okay.
why don't I send out the Eisner nominated book to as many literary agents as I can find that do graphic memoir, or just graphic novels in general, just to get on a radar, see if
Yeah.
anything happens, pitch this longer form memoir about my mom's adoption and all that stuff. So yeah, that literally started this week, where I was sending stuff out to literary agents. So I'm very interested to see if anything will happen with that.
Well, let's hope so. I mean,
Yeah, who knows?
Fantagraphics or Iron Circus, yeah, it sounds right up their alleys for sure.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like I miss Spike. Spike of Iron Circus. She used to come to the come to SPX every year, and I was like guaranteed a hug from Spike every year. But I don't think she loves the conventions, and she's so big now that
Yeah.
she could have her people work the convention. So I don't see her anymore, but I do miss her. And I think it's cool how Iron Circus has become such a success. When I remember I did my first SPX and I was hanging out with her, she was complaining about how, that web comics were kind of like put in a certain area of the convention, and they were seen like as like the bastard child of the,
Yep.
and I'm like, and those people they're the only ones making money at this, you making $1 million on a Kickstarter for doing like the sexiest Kickstarter anthology put out that year or something like that, like jokes on other people. Like they're doing amazing. So
It is. It's a
yeah,
weird world. It's not my kink. I mean, it's not something I'm
yeah,
into. I mean, I'm not
yeah.
judging, but it's
No,
just not my thing. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. But no,
yeah,
good for them. And I think my friend John Allen, he's had a book put out by Iron Circus. That's just straight graphic novel
yeah,
stuff. Really good
yeah,
stuff. But yeah, Fanta, Iron Circus. I think for me, I always feel a little out of place, even though I want to go. This small press is my place. I always feel a little out of place, and maybe that's just sort of how I walk through life in general. But I think I'm a little older than the average, um, self-sustaining comics creator. I think because I'm just a writer, and most other people are writer artists in that community. Um, and so like I don't know that Fana would, I know Gary and Eric over Fana. I don't know how interested they would be in So Buttons, but I think there's something literary there that's going on with So Buttons. And so that's why I'm like, let me try the literary route and see if that is something that I could try. But like I'm friendly with the guy who runs Silver Sprocket. I'm like, So Buttons is not a Silver Sprocket book, but I love their books. I love Pee Pee Poo Poo and other books by Silver Sprocket. So yeah, I will we'll see where all this leads. But as far as just like me and myself, I just keep going. Like
yeah.
one book a year, whether it's So Buttons or I do a special or for a convention or something. It doesn't stop. I didn't, when I put together the very first collection, I thought like, oh, I'm done. But I had a couple that didn't make it in. So I was like, well, let me just write another couple to fill out a second issue, and then I'll be done. And after
Yep.
that, it was that's just
You're
it.
hooked.
I'm just doing this forever. So,
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how, if I'll be able to keep going forever. That would be amazing. If I'm like a John Porcellino who, does King Cat, he's got his zines going forever. Yeah, I'd like to be like that guy. Just keep going. Just keep going.
They're much worse aspirations. I mean,
Totally.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Art and, supporting artists and all this stuff. No, it's fantastic. I love it.
Well, where can people go to support you?
If they want to buy some of my work, they can go to my website, sobuttons.com, sobuttons.com, and there's an ordering page, and I think there's sample stories there. More likely, people tend to find me or see me on Instagram, and in my Instagram is So Buttons Comics, and I think there's a shop there, where they could also buy books. So, and on Instagram, I have been systematically uploading every single story since issue 1 as like swipe stories. So like a page, if it's 6 panels, they get 6 panels that they could swipe through. And then the next post is the next page of that story. So I've
Oh,
got,
cool.
I think 9 or 10 of my issues up on Instagram, one panel at a time. So if they just want to read stuff, some of the stuff that we talked about today, like my Marvel internship, I've got a John Romita story there, and it's a story about, Valiant as things were falling apart with the distributor wars. I've got all kinds of stuff up there to read for free on Instagram. And I totally invite anyone to look at that stuff. And if they want a hard copy, I got you covered. I got you covered.
I'll put links in the show notes to make it easy so everybody can
Sure.
find you. I
Cool.
always like to wrap these things up with the shout out because I like positive notes here to wrap things up. So it can be someone who did something nice for you recently or something that inspired you. So I've got mine first to give you a minute to think. My personal response to this inundation of AI being forced on all of us has been to
Mm.
embrace looking at videos of people actually making things with their hands. So this has been everything from crafting concrete orb planners or making kokedamas, which I wasn't familiar with previously, but these are these beautiful Japanese moss ball creations that you put plants in.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, they're really cool. I love organic forms and natural
Like a
forms. So it's
nicer
been really
chia pet,
pretty much, yeah, yeah,
right? Because it's
exactly.
the moss. Yeah.
Yeah, it's clay in the center and then sphagnum moss, so something inert, and then live moss on the outside, and you just keep sort of spraying it periodically, and they stay green, and they're beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. So
Cool. Let me
yeah.
think. Let's see. Because okay. I know exactly what I want to give a shout out. I want to give a shout out to a guy named Durf. Durf back Durf.
Oh, this is great. Okay, guy named
Yeah.
Durf, I'm in.
Yeah, Durf Back Durf is a guy that he came up through independent newspaper uh, comics. Like in New York, it was called the New York Press, and that was back what you had like Linda Barry would be in there, and Kaz and Matt Groening and all kinds of good
Yeah.
people. And he's did that from Cleveland. I think he was born in Akron, maybe, but he did that in the Cleveland papers as well as other independent papers in the U.S. And he built up from doing those strips. He started to do comics, and I bought those comics. He did a comic that was about Jeffrey Dahmer, who he went to school with. Went to
Oh,
school with,
wild.
and I think it was called like My Friend Dahmer, which he then later turned into like a much larger graphic novel, and they made a movie about it. Um, and he also did this book called Trashed, which is really good. But because he's from that area in Ohio, he did a book a couple of years ago called Kent State. And the only thing I really know about Kent State is like that photo that we saw as Gen
Yeah.
Xers. Like
Yep.
you see the photo of the girl screaming over the guy who's dead on the ground because the National Guard shot him. And I feel like if this book came out today, it would win the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, it is just
Yeah.
could not be more relevant as you've got tanks going into Los Angeles. Uh, a graphic novel about what went down, how it went down, and just how insane it was to have the National Guard shoot students who were protesting at a college. And that book is absolutely one of the best, graphic. It's not a novel, right? Nor is it a memoir because he was not there, but it is graphic journalism. That's what I'll say. Is a graphic journalism. Durf wrote this thing called Kent State that is one of the best graphic journalistic books I have ever read. It is amazing. That's my shout out.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'll have to check that out. I'm not familiar with
It's
that one.
incredible. It is incredible. Because like the way that he paces it with the storytelling, it is just a treatise on tension and how to do that using the comics form while also being journalistic. It is incredible, and it is terrifying, and it is relevant, and it's just an amazing work of art.
Oh, wow.
For this story to be in comics form. Yeah, it's amazing.
I'll check that out because I've been
Yeah.
going back and picking up some stuff like that. I just finished Ducks, Kate Beckton's Ducks
Oh,
recently.
sure. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, not
Canadian.
quite as I mean, actually, sexual assault very material to today, but
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
yeah, not quite so in the news, I guess would be. But yeah, personal
Right.
experience and an autobiographical sort of. Well, not in their case with Kent State, but yeah, I love stuff like that, so I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, Kate Beaton's amazing. I gave out an Ignatz Award. I was a presenter at the Ignatz's a couple
Oh,
of years
okay,
ago, and I gave an award to Ducks that year. And
okay. I realize
I'm married to a Canadian, so I'm happy to give awards to Canadians.
Well, you just corrected me. I realized I pronounced that wrong. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Her last
yeah,
name.
Beaton. Yeah, Kate
Yeah.
Beaton. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, I wish you nothing but the best of luck with the
Thanks
Eisner
so
Award
much.
show.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
as a disabled person myself, I have a fair bit of FOMO for shows and cons because I can't make them. I don't travel well
Mhm.
these days. But
Yeah.
if they ever make a vaccine for autoimmune conditions, unlikely anytime soon, probably with RFK in charge.
Yeah, I don't
But
Kennedy does not have your back.
yeah. But if they do, or if my body just decides to burn through lupus, man, I will be hitting you up at a convention and buying you lunch because it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, this is Byron O'Neill, and on behalf of all of us at Comic Book Yeti, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.